Good morning, and thank you for coming. My name is Susan Olson. I'm the Director of Legislation for the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire. With me here today is Michelle Lavelle, the Chair of the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire. This is not the first time that we've held a press conference here in the Legislative Office Building, nor the first time that we have addressed actions in this legislature regarding firearms. But we're here very specifically because you heard earlier this morning from a representative of a New York-based organization called Moms Demand Action, the wholly owned subsidiary of another New York-based organization called Everytown for Gun Safety, whose majority shareholder is former New York City mayor and Wall Street billionaire Michael Bloomberg. That's quite a pedigree. They were here today, and they remain here today, to protest legislation being deliberated by and on behalf of New Hampshireites that would end nearly a century of discrimination aimed at disarming foreign-born residents and burgeoning trade unionists. Perhaps not coincidentally, Everytown and Bloomberg's hometown, New York City, gave birth to that discrimination in 1911, statutorily disarming every citizen except, of course, those who had friends in the famously corrupt Tammany Hall machine driven by Big Tim Sullivan himself. 105 years later, nothing seems to have changed. Today, standing on the bodies of dead children and wrapping themselves in some self-anointed mantle of moral authority, Moms Demand Action and its corporate handlers are demanding New Hampshire's surrender to their culture of victimhood, where evil lurks in the hearts and minds of men and women, where only bigger government and more laws can have the slightest chance of saving you from being murdered in your sleep by Mr. and Mrs. America. With a $40.7 million candy jar in 2014 alone, the corporate masters of Mom Demand Action quietly hide behind their well-tailored skirts while dispensing cash to local organizations and big-shot New Hampshire lobbyists in order to sway opinion and votes. Funny thing, though, these are the same kind of folks who demand that money be removed from politics while quietly contributing to buy seats for their ideological minions. The Women's Defense League of New Hampshire, a truly all-volunteer, New Hampshire born and bred organization without a $4 million slush fund, much less a $40 million one, stand here today and demand an end to this culture of victimhood and hopelessness. We want an end, we demand an end to women and minorities being treated as helpless and hopeless, and more menacingly, being treated like we are the enemy. The Women's Defense League of New Hampshire refuses to acquiesce to those who tut-tut discrimination and profiling and call themselves public safety instead. A Russian writer named Stanislav Mishin, a survivor of Soviet Russia, recently wrote this: "Do not be fooled by a belief that progressives and leftists hate guns. Oh no, they do not. What they hate is guns in the hands of those who are not marching in lockstep to their ideology. They hate guns in the hands of those who think for themselves and do not obey without question. They hate guns in the hands of those whom they have slated for a barrel behind the ear. Enough is enough. Take your blood money, take your lobbyists, take your ethnic and gender hatred, and go back to New York. This is New Hampshire." Thank you. I'd like to introduce Michelle Lavelle.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today with us. I'd like to ask you a question. What makes someone suitable? How do you define it? If everyone here answered that question, we would have entirely unique answers from each person. That is exactly the problem. Because there is no definition for police chiefs, they can have their own definitions of suitable for issuing pistol revolver licenses. Based on recent situations, suitable seems to be more about compliance and who you know instead of being a law-abiding citizen. Last summer, my pistol revolver license came up for renewal. My chief had approved me twice before, but this time he declined my application. I am not a prohibited person and had not received so much as a speeding ticket. My application was complete and accurate. So why did my police chief deny me? I did not provide phone numbers for my 3 references, which is not required on the application. I did not comply with their demand. Because the department was slow to follow up, my friends did not receive letters from the police department until day 13 of what is supposed to be a 14-day process. In the meantime, the department denied my renewal on day 12, citing that they had not heard from my references. There was no possible way to meet the deadline given their process at all. Ultimately, I had to take the police department to court. It was the only way to resolve it per state statute. I was deemed guilty and had to prove my innocence. Because of a bizarre series of scheduled snafus by the court, it took 112 days to appear before the judge. The hearing was very adversarial, but the judge quickly ruled in my favor. By the end of the day, the police department notified my attorney that the license was approved. While waiting for the hearing, I was at risk. I was not allowed to discreetly carry a firearm to protect myself. What if I was involved in an abusive relationship? Thank God I'm not. But how many women are and are not found suitable by their police chiefs? The whole ordeal also cost me considerable time, effort, and money. How many people can take time off of work, perhaps get a babysitter, and hire an attorney to challenge their local police departments? It is no surprise that few can defend themselves given the price. Recently, 2 members of the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire told us that their local police departments, Litchfield and Hudson, are insisting on their references phone numbers too. These are unlawful requirements. Sure, phone numbers might be more convenient or expedite the process, but the demand goes beyond what is required on the form. It is also expressly prohibited, as the license application says, quote, "No other form shall be used by officials of cities and towns," end quote. Yet police departments are routinely demanding additional information to determine suitability. These are not the only abuses by New Hampshire police chiefs. The Seabrook Police Department has their own set of additional requirements, which include showing proof of residency and that references must be local residents, but not family members. The state form already requires the applicant's address and includes a statement that it must be completed in good faith and any misinformation is grounds for denial. When will this capricious abuse of power end? When will people be judged by the law instead of those who twist it? Earl Sweeney of the State Department of Safety acknowledged these abuses in evidence submitted to the House Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. In a letter dated April 19, 2016, Mr. Sweeney said the suitability requirements are, quote, "seldom abused." The fact that they are abused at all is unacceptable. If we were discussing abuse of another type, would we accept it if it happened only seldom? Of course not. Likewise, we will not accept the state-sanctioned abuse of law-abiding citizens who are denied their rights. The discrimination and abuse can end today if Governor Hassan will allow House Bill 582 to pass into law. It is the twin to last year's Senate Bill 116. In 2 consecutive years, the New Hampshire House and Senate have passed these bills that would set the parameters for issuing licenses with clear and unambiguous terms, replacing the vague word suitable with unless the applicant is prohibited from possessing a firearm by state or federal statute. This legislation would end nearly 100 years of state-sanctioned discrimination that continues to this day. Our governor has the opportunity to address a horrible injustice, to correct an ugly statute based in hatred and ignorance that hurts law-abiding New Hampshire residents today. Please contact Governor Hassan, urging her to end the abuse, end discrimination, and sign HB 582.
Michelle's is not the only story, and the only stories are not from New Hampshire residents. A member of the Women's Defense League recently sent us a little note and said, you know, I live in Massachusetts, I have a license to carry in Massachusetts, and I'd sent an application for a non-resident license to the State Department of Safety, to Sergeant Sean Haggerty, who's the head of the licensing division. She sent her completed application, she sent the double-sided copy of her Massachusetts license, and she sent a check for $100. This was on February the 4th. She let us know about this approximately 2 weeks ago and said, what can I do? Well, we decided to step into the fray, and we contacted Sergeant Haggerty. And Sergeant Haggerty, either because he's decided that the law is the law and he must follow it, or he doesn't like any more bad publicity than what we've given him already, has contacted our member directly. She has since sent her application a new check, paid the bank fees to cancel the old one, another copy of her Massachusetts license, and sent a return receipt requested. He received it Monday. The clock starts. He has 14 days to approve it, and believe me, we're going to be watching it. But why is it? Why is it that New Hampshire citizens and our friends in other states must go through these hoops? Because we let our legislators, we let our governor, we let outside big money groups hire big shot lobbyists to come in and push their agenda in Concord in the State House. We're volunteers, we're not paid, we're here because we're trying to do the right thing. We can't compete with those lobbyists, but we want them to know very clearly that we're not going away, we're not going to quit. If we don't like the law, we change the law. We don't buy the law. So thank you for coming today. We'd be happy to take any questions you might have. You can find out more information about the Women's Defense League on our website, www.wdnlnh.org, or you can join us this Sunday on the grounds of the state capitol from 12 until 2 for the second annual Gun Rights or Women's Rights Rally, where we're going to stand up and say, Governor Hassan, enough. Sign these bills. Thank you very much for coming today.